My drawer had been ransacked by the school beauty. Overnight, the love letter I wrote to Preston Montgomery was photocopied into hundreds of flyers and plastered in every corner of the school. Everyone was calling me a sicko who liked men. Even Preston wouldn't listen to my explanation. He fired my parents and had me expelled from the university. Having lost our source of income, my mother couldn't afford her medicine and soon passed away from illness. My father took odd jobs at an unsafe sweatshop. Due to a coworker's error, he was pulled into a machine and died from his injuries. I lost all hope and jumped from a building. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Scarlet Summers rifled through my drawer, facing everyone's skepticism and cold stares. I snatched back the love letter and pointed at the school bully sitting in the corner. This was written for my boyfriend. The whispering seemed to hit a pause button. Everyone looked toward the corner in unison. They were attempting to get an answer from the other person involved. Sensing the scrutinizing gazes, Sterling Blackwood lazily lifted his head. The slightly long hair over his forehead partially obscured his eyes, and his whole body radiated an aura that said, "Don't mess with me." Suddenly, the room fell silent. Sterling Blackwood's sexual orientation was public knowledge. 6 months ago, on the first day of school, rumor had spread through the entire campus Sterling had gotten into a brawl with someone over an ex-boyfriend, and rumor had it he broke the guy's ribs. Some didn't believe it and intentionally picked a fight. The result was Sterling beating them into submission. This solidified his title as the school bully. Seeing no one speak, Sterling turned his head away coldly, making no comment. The next second, skeptical eyes turned back to me. They didn't believe Sterling and I were together, especially Scarlet Summers, who had found the love letter. She refused to let it go. "When did you two get together? Why didn't he admit it?" I stared steadily at Scarlet Summers. In my past life, Scarlet, the school beauty, was egged on by her clique to confess her feelings to the campus heartthrob, Preston Montgomery. Unexpectedly, she was rejected outright. The matter should have ended there. However, before she had walked far, Scarlet heard someone say to Preston, "The school beauty is pretty and all, but compared to Julian Foster, she's lacking a bit." Preston, the center of attention, didn't refute it. He just chuckled. He doesn't like being compared. From then on, Scarlet held a grudge against me. She took out her anger on me. Considering Scarlet was a girl, I endured it again and again. Until Scarlet's clique said I looked like a pansy and asked if I was in love with Preston Montgomery. So, while I wasn't paying attention, Scarlet ransacked my drawer. Unfortunately, she found the love letter I was preparing to tear up. Unlike the helplessness and speechlessness of my past life, I didn't offer an explanation but said calmly, "Scarlet, I have no obligation to tell you anything. Believe what you want. Also, isn't it incredibly rude to rummage through my drawer without my permission?" As soon as these words came out, most of the classmates believed me because my demeanor was so composed. I didn't look like I was lying. Instead, people started noticing Scarlet's behavior. "Yeah, how can you just rummage through someone's drawer? If something valuable went missing, who would be responsible?" Scarlet blushed crimson at the criticism. Soon, no one pestered me about the love letter anymore. I lowered my eyes and smiled self-deprecatingly. When placed on Sterling Blackwood, who was tough and came from a powerful background, being gay was no longer an unforgivable sin. But if it were me, Preston's companion student, the son of a common chauffeur, what I would face would be an endless abyss. Since the discovery of the love letter, Preston Montgomery hadn't said a word. First came immense shock, then disgust. Later, when he heard Sterling and I were dating, Preston's expression grew inexplicably dark. During the grade assembly, our counselor, Mr. Higgins, was introducing a popular scientific research competition and urging students to develop comprehensively. Suddenly, Preston, sitting next to me, pushed over a note. "You're gay," crossed out, "When did you start dating him?" The heavy pen strokes revealed the owner's irritable mood. I didn't answer the question. Instead, I waited for the bell to ring. I went to find Mr. Higgins. "Professor, I want to change dorms." Mr. Higgins was stunned, then hesitated. Strictly speaking, changing dorms in university required filing reports and was a hassle, but remembering the rumors he had heard. "Julian, where do you want to move?" Ignoring Preston's disbelief and slightly angry gaze, I said without thinking, "Professor, I want to live with Sterling Blackwood." If I remembered correctly, Sterling lived in a double room, but his roommate had taken a leave of absence at the start of the semester. Not far away, students who had stayed behind to eavesdrop exchanged subtle looks. Mr. Higgins thought for a moment. Considering the consequences of various possibilities, he waved his hand with a headache. Fine, fine, go ahead and move. That night, in front of Preston and my other roommates, I packed up all my things and moved to Sterling's side. Before leaving, I heard the two roommates discussing, "Wow, the scary gay guy is finally gone. If he refused to leave, we probably wouldn't be able to sleep at night." "Don't you think so, young Master Preston?" I didn't deliberately listen for Preston's answer, because none of it mattered anymore. After getting the key from the dorm manager, I pushed open the door to Sterling's room. No one was there. I breathed an inexplicable sigh of relief. Sterling didn't know about this yet. It was indeed a bit improper to act first and report later, but this was the best solution I could think of. I closed the door and began to quietly organize my bed, but in my mind, I started to formulate my words. In my impression, Sterling was used to being alone. The adolescent boy had a lean face but carried a unique, unlikable sharpness. This was my earliest view of Sterling. My opinion of him changed in my last life when I suffered cold stares and exclusion. Because I couldn't afford expensive specialty medicine, I had to start an online fundraiser. During the tense wait, only Sterling and Mr. Higgins donated to me. Later, my dad passed away. It was also Sterling who asked someone to ask if I needed legal aid, saying he could help me hire the best lawyer. Sterling was even kinder than I imagined. Perhaps his life must have been very happy, which was why he spared no effort to help an old classmate in trouble. Later, I jumped. My soul was trapped in this miserable world. After wandering for months, I wanted to say a final thank you to Sterling. But who knew, when I passed through the wall into the Blackwood home, Sterling was lying silently on the bed. He had swallowed pills and committed suicide. 2 medical records lay quietly on the desk. One was for moderate to severe hearing impairment. The other was for severe depression. The dorm door wasn't closed tightly. The night breeze blew gently. I turned around inadvertently and crashed into Sterling's brooding eyes. I opened my mouth but swallowed my words. The dorm's soundproofing wasn't good. To be safe, I handed a pre-written note to Sterling and put my palms together, pleading with him to read it first. Under my slightly nervous gaze, Sterling's fingertips moved slightly. He picked up the note. If I guessed correctly, when I lied without blinking earlier, Sterling didn't react simply because he couldn't hear. Using Sterling's identity and background, I needed to apologize to him. As expected, after seeing the content, Sterling's movements paused. I pursed my lips and added nervously, "I'm really sorry, but for the next few months, could I trouble you to continue playing this role? Scarlett and Preston would definitely not let this go. I couldn't let them see any flaws. Otherwise, I would end up like in my past life. Expelled with nowhere to go." While I was anxious and letting my imagination run wild, a cold voice sounded in my ear. "Besides being a boyfriend, is there anything else I need to do?" I turned my head and stared blankly at Sterling. He was staring at a brochure that had fallen on the floor from somewhere, and the ears covered by his hair were slightly red. I pursed my lips and smiled gently. Sterling was still so kind. Every weekend, Preston would go home. And I would go back with him. This time was no exception. After getting in the car, Preston didn't say a word. My dad, Frank Foster, repeatedly looked through the rearview mirror to gauge the young master's mood. My dad worried a lot and was prone to overthinking. I quickly gave him a reassuring look. Seeing this, my dad relaxed. When we arrived in front of the Montgomery villa, Preston walked away without looking back. I didn't chase after him to coax him like before. Instead, I stood quietly in front of the garage. Wait for my dad to park the car. We walked toward the warehouse on the side. That was the staff quarters provided by the Montgomery family. As we approached the door, I stopped and called out to Frank. "Dad, I want to talk to you." Frank stopped abruptly. He turned around, looking worried. "Is young Master Preston bullying you again?" Hearing this, my heart trembled. I was a child born to them late in life. My parents cherished me very much. But when you live under someone else's roof, you have to bow your head. Whenever Preston and I had a conflict, Frank would tell me to endure it, to bow my head and admit my mistake. Over time, he felt very guilty toward me. I shook my head, avoiding the question. "Dad, apply for retirement with Mr. Montgomery." Frank had been with the Montgomery family for decades. He firmly believed he had a deep bond with the head of the household, but he forgot, capitalists have no feelings. In my past life, after the Montgomery family found an excuse to fire Frank, they not only didn't pay the severance package as promised, but even used means to prevent him from getting his deserved pension. When I prepared to demand an explanation, I unexpectedly heard Mrs. Montgomery complaining. The Fosters simply don't know their place. We were kind enough to provide jobs and even buy such expensive medicine for his mother. Yet that kid dared to have designs on our son. They deserve to be destitute and begging everywhere. In that moment, I couldn't refute it. Yes, the Montgomery family had done their utmost for us. This was all my fault. I shouldn't have liked Preston. That day, I returned to the rental apartment in a daze. Because I had spent all my savings, my mom couldn't afford medicine and was bedridden. Don't blame yourself. Mom doesn't blame you. Mom only blames herself for letting you suffer so much, for not being able to give you a life like young Master Preston's. My mom said that more than 10 years ago, when she saw me as a child being ridden like a horse by Preston of the same age. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife, and she could hardly breathe. But she had no choice. The Foster family needed to rely on the Montgomery family to survive. Frank had already reached retirement age. The butler had tactfully mentioned retirement to him, but he felt he could still work for the employer for a few more years. I also realized in hindsight that Frank's work was gradually being replaced by a new, younger driver. He was only responsible for driving us to and from school. I let out a deep breath. Our family should have known better long ago. Take the generous pension and leave the Montgomery family with dignity. Not only could my parents go back to the countryside to retire, but the monthly pension would also fully cover the cost of medical expenses. Furthermore, my dad's 4 siblings were all in the township, so they could look out for each other. I carefully told Frank my thoughts. After a long while, he wiped his face. Dad will listen to you. I knew he felt bad, but facts were facts. The Montgomery family and the Foster family had never been in an equal relationship. The new Monday. I waited at the villa gate as usual. Unexpectedly, the butler, Mr. Chen, saw me and said in surprise, "Julian, your dad already took the young master to school." I opened my mouth, then swallowed my words. Finally, I thanked Mr. Chen for the reminder. This was the first time Preston hadn't waited for me. I could tell he was very angry. My heart remained calm. Let him be angry. It was better than tearing each other apart like in the last life. I walked calmly toward the subway station a kilometer away. The downside of living in the villa district was the inconvenience of transportation. Oh, wait, the inconvenience was only for me. When the class bell rang, I rushed into the lecture hall just in time, panting heavily. Preston, who was already sitting in his seat, didn't even look at me. He was explaining coding steps to Scarlett. I calmed my breathing. I walked straight to the corner without looking sideways. The meticulous old professor was teaching calculus on stage. I wanted to listen carefully, but because I didn't have time to buy breakfast, coupled with the sprint, my stomach was aching dully. When I lay on the table with a pale face, the person next to me moved and stuffed something into my hand, a warm sandwich and milk. I froze, then looked up. It was Sterling, who had appeared at some point. I asked in lip language, "What about your breakfast?" Sterling obediently turned sideways, revealing a triangular onigiri rice ball in his drawer. Seeing this, I took the sandwich and milk with relief, but the warm sensation in my palm lasted less than a second. A stern voice sounded above my head. "What are you two doing? Playing on your phones first thing in the morning?" Many universities have a tradition of patrol inspections. The purpose is to supervise teacher and student attendance, maintain teaching order, and ensure standardized teaching environments. So when the patrol teacher was performing his duty, he sharply noticed students whispering in the classroom. Their hands were pushing something back and forth. It looked exactly like they were playing with phones. But after the patrol teacher rushed in, he held the fragrant sandwich, losing a bit of face, "Just handing over breakfast, and you two were taking forever." After saying that, he left without looking back. Many classmates around were attracted by the commotion. They secretly looked at Sterling and me, their eyes full of curiosity. Suddenly, I didn't know who said it. "They're actually kinda cute together." I pursed my lips tightly, staring at the familiar math formulas. Mixed thoughts inexplicably flashed through my mind. Clearly, in my past life, that's not what they said. Under Mr. Higgins' supervision, I signed up for a relevant professional competition. It would add points for guaranteed graduate school admission. However, going from 0 to 1 is hard, and time was tight, the tasks heavy. When Preston found me, it was 10 minutes before an online group discussion. He was irritable and cut straight to the chase. "Break up with Sterling. You don't want Uncle Frank to know you're gay, right? Be obedient, break up, and move your things back." I looked steadily at Preston. My eyes were full of confusion. "What does this have to do with you? Besides, now the whole class knows I'm gay." You want me to move back and be your roommate. Aren't you afraid of people gossiping and it eventually reaching your parents? In this life, I was very good at giving people a taste of their own medicine. Sure enough, Preston's face turned ugly. He always acted according to his own whims without ever considering the consequences. Before leaving, I asked calmly if the love letter Scarlett found was written for you. Would you continue to be my roommate? Or would you be disgusted and avoid me like the plague? Hearing this, Preston's eyes flickered. He didn't answer, but I knew the answer. Mr. Montgomery, let's keep our distance, for your own good and for mine. Frank's retirement application was approved. Once my grad school recommendation was finalized, he would take my mom back to the countryside to recuperate, and the two would enjoy their old age. After hanging up the phone, the stone in my heart finally landed. To thank Sterling for his help, I invited him to participate in the competition with me. Unexpectedly, Sterling's skills were even more solid than I imagined, even very good. Thanks to Sterling's help, the group's progress advanced by leaps and bounds. We passed through all the trials, reaching the finals. With the team's joint efforts, we successfully won the National Gold Award, breaking the college's historical record for awards. I excitedly hugged Sterling. Gold, we can be guaranteed admission. Although Sterling held the title of school bully, he studied what needed to be studied, and his grades hadn't fallen behind at all. Sterling didn't speak, just smiled at me. Soon, midsummer arrived as scheduled. Major universities began their summer camps one after another. Sterling and I also embarked on the journey of seeking education. Our last stop happened to be Capital University in the same city. The day before the written exam, with my reminders, Sterling dawdled while packing his stationery and exam admission ticket. Seeing him so nervous, I sighed helplessly and decided to walk Sterling home. It would be good for providing psychological counseling on the way. The Blackwood home was in the south of the city. I walked on Sterling's right, chatting incessantly all the way. The roadside was very quiet. The slightly hot evening breeze blew toward the horizon, and the blue-pink sunset glow grew more intense. After delivering Sterling to the gate and looking at those inexplicably melancholic eyes, I thought for a moment and patted his head. After the written exam is over, I'll take you to the countryside to play. After more than half a year of spending time together, the familiarity between Sterling and me had grown significantly. Hearing what I said, Sterling's eyes brightened for a moment. Immediately after, he pushed me outward a bit. Go back and review quickly. I couldn't help but smile. Sterling just looked fierce. In reality, he was a softy with a cold face who showed his soft belly. I took 2 steps back and waved. You too. See you tomorrow. While the sky was not yet completely dark, I carried my backpack and retraced my steps. Walking quickly to the entrance of the Villa District, passing a newsstand, I bought a bottle of water from the owner. While waiting for the owner to give change, 2 old ladies were reading the newspaper nearby. Did you hear? The master of that house is back. Tusk, 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 that boy is going to suffer again. Sigh, who asked him to be stuck with such a dad? I've lived most of my life, and this is the first time I've seen someone who likes to domestically abuse his own biological son so much. My hand holding the water bottle paused, and my peripheral vision subconsciously caught the article headline on the newspaper. Ministry of Education. Universities nationwide have announced exemption lists. Comprehensive increase in an instant. The memories of my past life spun like a vortex, finally freezing on a certain frame. Special report. A parent in this city, due to excessive drinking, accidentally broke 2 of a male university student's ribs. The student had excellent grades, but was unable to participate in the written selection for his dream school due to the incident. According to insiders, the student will go to a certain country to attend a well-known university. In my past life, during the 2 days of the pre-admission process, my mother's attending physician issued a notice of critical illness. Because I couldn't scrape together the expensive surgical fees, I knelt at the gate of the Montgomery house, begging them to have mercy and help. However, no one paid attention to me. Finally, the butler, Mr. Chen, couldn't stand it and pulled me up. He dragged me to a corner without surveillance cameras and stuffed a bank card into my hand. I've known your dad for so many years. It's not much money, just a token of my regard. Julian, don't come back again. The madam just said that if you dare to appear again, she will withdraw your mother's attending physician. In that instant, all sounds left me. There was only a blurry ringing in my ears. After I paid the fees at the window, my mom had a rare moment of clarity. She weakly raised her hand. Jules has the Has the grad school application been going smoothly these past 2 days? Are you nervous? Hearing the concerned words, I opened my mouth and lied subconsciously. Yeah, everything is going smoothly. My mom revealed a relieved smile. At this time, the uncle in the next bed was scrolling through videos. The sound of the news broadcast echoed in the ward. Special report. A parent in this city, due to excessive drinking, accidentally broke two of a male university student's ribs. Everyone in the ward sighed. My mom also couldn't bear it. What a sin. My chaotic thoughts fell into place. All the details seemed to connect. The injuries that appeared on Sterling from time to time, making people think he had been fighting again, and those two medical reports. In an instant, my blood ran cold. I should have realized it sooner. Ignoring the shopkeeper, who was still slowly finding change, I turned abruptly and ran, leaving the shopkeeper's urgent calls behind me. The sky was getting darker. The hot wind kept pouring down my throat, dry and uncomfortable, even smelling of rust, but I didn't dare stop. Soon the Blackwood Villa came into view. I sprinted at 100-meter dash speed, rushed to the door and banged on it. Sterling opened the door. I kept knocking, but no one answered. I panicked more and more, cold sweat breaking out on my back. Sterling promised me we were going to continue attending the same university. I didn't dare stop, the force in my hands getting stronger. Just as I couldn't help but think the worst and prepared to smash a window to break in, the door suddenly opened. Sterling's cheekbone was bruised. The corner of his mouth was also cut. The boy gritted his teeth, radiating stubbornness from his whole body. No matter how wronged he felt, he wouldn't let out a single sound of begging for mercy. But this Sterling, whose spine would never bend, who swallowed his tears back down. Upon seeing me, his eyes inexplicably turned red. In that instant, my heart felt like it was fiercely squeezed. I almost couldn't breathe. The quiet atmosphere lasted only a second. A sanctimonious voice came from behind Sterling. "Sterling, who is it?" Sterling's expression went blank. Subconsciously, he wanted to hide me. I didn't move. Instead, I grabbed his wrist. Not far away stood a man with a slightly flushed face, emitting a faint smell of alcohol. He looked somewhat sober. I smiled politely. "Hello, uncle." The counselor asked the professors to come up with a set of practice questions. He asked the students preparing for Capital University to go to his place tonight to do them, to try and gain a few more points on the written exam. As soon as the words fell, Reginald Blackwood's gaze shifted between Sterling and me. He chuckled with unclear emotion. "I think doing practice questions is fake, and abducting my son is the truth, right? Student, you should go back." Sterling's face paled for a moment. Sensing Sterling's unease, I squeezed his wrist imperceptibly. I stepped forward and handed over the phone. The next second, Mr. Higgins' voice came through the speakerphone. "Sterling's father, the students and I are all waiting for Sterling at the school. I hope you can understand and support the college's postgraduate admission rate work." Reginald Blackwood cared most about his reputation. Since the teacher personally called, he could only let Sterling leave. "Wash your face before you go." Reginald glanced at me. Then he left with an unhappy expression. Sterling stood frozen on the spot. He seemed surprised that his father would be so agreeable. I pursed my lips. After the experiences of my past life, I had to understand that people of Reginald's class cared most about face, in other words, hypocrisy. He had no reason to refuse a legitimate request. Afraid Reginald would change his mind, I pulled the packed Sterling and we fled from this man-eating villa. Halfway there, I looked down at the navigation. Sterling asked a beat slow, "Aren't we going to the counselor's place?" This silly child still hadn't figured out that the counselor and I had set up a trap for his dad. Truly clumsy. After confirming the direction, I pulled Sterling's wrist and walked straight toward the pharmacy. Near the exam site, a standard hotel room. Sterling stood at the door at a loss. I took out the ointment and looked at Sterling with amusement. "What are you standing there for? Come here." I had booked the hotel in advance. The goal was to save travel time. After hurrying to apply the medicine to Sterling, the takeout I ordered also arrived. Seeing me eating while looking at materials, Sterling also started to imitate me, until lights out. Only then did we reluctantly put down our books. In the silent darkness, Sterling's breathing was very rhythmic, but people who are truly asleep don't breathe that fast. "Sterling," I kept my voice very light, "are you nervous? Why haven't you fallen asleep?" In my line of sight was a blurry silhouette. Sterling raised his forearm to cover his eyes. "Yeah, but not because of the exam." I rolled over. "Then why?" Streetlights slipped through the gap in the curtains, warm yellow strips sneaking onto the quilt. secretly listening to the conversation. After a while, Sterling's throat tightened. He was scared in hindsight. What if that man hurt Julian? What if it delayed Julian taking the written exam? When things quieted down, he couldn't control his wild thoughts. If there's a next time, don't worry about me. The atmosphere became inexplicably heavy. I didn't agree or refuse. Instead, I changed the subject. Can you tell me, what happened to your ears? The room was very quiet. Sterling and I chatted intermittently. Soon, I peered into a corner of that past. Sterling's mother died in childbirth. He was raised by a nanny since childhood, but because Reginald didn't care about Sterling, the servants of the Blackwood family were very perfunctory with the young master, until Sterling was 7 years old. Reginald brought back a gentle woman. Only this seemingly kind woman, jealous of Sterling's status as the eldest son, often abused him behind people's backs. Not giving him food or beating and scolding him were common occurrences, until Sterling's 8th birthday. Because he had played greedily in the garden 2 days prior, he had a high fever that wouldn't go down. The woman lifted the listless Sterling from the bed and slapped him furiously. She screamed hysterically. I told you not to get sick, you had to pick the day your father came back. From then on, Sterling's left auditory nerve was damaged, and his hearing declined. After the incident, Reginald was furious. He mercilessly threw the woman out and cut off all possibilities in her life. He doesn't love me, Sterling smiled self-deprecatingly, just because they hadn't gotten a marriage certificate yet, and my dad hates outsiders dictating terms over his property. So Sterling escaped a disaster through that. I pursed my lips tight, my heart aching suddenly. From the moment Sterling started speaking in a calm tone, I felt so uncomfortable I could hardly breathe. Because I couldn't help but think of my past life. He had lived so bitterly himself, yet he still extended a helping hand to me unconditionally. I lay on the edge of the bed and held Sterling's hand on the other side. Soon, the sensation of rising temperature came from my palm. Don't be afraid, I'll stay with you. The written exam went even smoother than I imagined. I kept my promise. I took Sterling back to the countryside to play. My parents were very happy. Every day they cooked delicious food for us in different ways. My dad had successfully retired, and my mom, exposed to the fresh country air and the slow pace of life, actually got much better physically. That night, I took Sterling up the mountain to watch the stars. During his time at my house, Sterling's complexion had been nourished until it was rosy. He propped himself up on the grass, looking at the stars overhead. Life now feels unrealistically happy. I turned my head and stared at his profile. When the atmosphere was just right, I spoke abruptly. About asking you to pretend to be my boyfriend before. Sterling's smile froze. He scrambled up, turning to leave. Let's go back, it's getting late. I stifled a laugh and called out to Sterling. Actually, some things didn't need a long time to consider. I raised my voice slightly. Hey, do you want to be even happier? For example, do you want to be my real boyfriend? The day the postgraduate admission notices came out, the class organized a team-building event. When Sterling and I just arrived at the private room, many classmates congratulated us. Congrats, top students of Capital University, facing the proactive signals of goodwill. I smiled politely but didn't respond. Because I knew clearly that this belated respect was just exchanged for the title of a prestigious school. Preston was there too. His face was a bit ugly because more than a year ago, I had agreed to go to the same university as him. During the meal, classmates started playing Truth or Dare. Within 3 rounds, unlucky me was chosen. Immediately, people started hooting. I noticed Scarlett winking at others, and the next second someone said, "Since it's a dare, then kiss the person on your left for 3 seconds." The person sitting on my left was Sterling. The atmosphere instantly boiled over. The noise in the private room was loud. Sterling couldn't hear clearly what they were saying. Honestly, I didn't want to be the object of onlookers, especially under circumstances deliberately instigated by someone. Glancing at Preston, who was clenching his fists across from me, and Scarlett, who wouldn't give up, I turned Sterling's face, aimed, and touched briefly before pulling away. After the air was quiet for a second, the screaming around us almost broke the ceiling. Sterling, who didn't understand why, froze slightly. He didn't speak, just held my hand with a red face. Before anyone could continue gossiping, Preston suddenly smashed the glass in his hand. Shards flew, narrowly missing someone's ankle. He had a dark face. Julian Foster, come outside with me. To prevent Preston from continuing to go crazy, I squeezed Sterling's hand reassuringly. Then I left with Preston, one after the other. In the quiet corridor corner, Preston clenched his back molars tightly. What exactly do you mean? It's one thing not to go to the same university as me, but why did Uncle Frank quit too? Do you think just because your whole family moved out, you can cut off contact with me? Seeing Preston looking almost on the verge of a breakdown, I asked back. Otherwise. Our two families were originally in a pure employer-employee relationship. We were never equals. Since my dad reached retirement age, does our family moving away have anything to do with you? Preston was confused by my series of questions. He denied subconsciously, no, aren't we friends? Friends. Friends who watched coldly as my family was ruined in my past life. I shook my head. Sorry, I have the right to refuse to be friends with you. I didn't want to get entangled further and turned to leave. Who knew Preston would grab me abruptly? He used so much force that the muscles on his face were trembling. The love letter. That love letter was written for me, right? I turned back slowly. Even if it was written for you, so what? A flash of joy passed through Preston's eyes. Before he could speak and reveal his heart, I interrupted. Do you dare to go into that private room and tell everyone right to their faces that you like me, that you're gay? In an instant, Preston let go subconsciously. Staring at his pale face, I smiled. You don't dare. The start of the new academic year for graduate school, Sterling chose to minor in law. He hoped that if he encountered vulnerable groups suffering from domestic violence or school bullying, he could provide a little professional help, no matter how insignificant. And I chose to minor in psychology. Because I had a lover who was sensitive, conflicted, and liked to hide his wounds. On the first day of school, someone confessed to Sterling. I thought he would find an excuse to reject them. Unexpectedly, he came out of the closet directly. Soon, I was doxxed as Sterling's partner. For a while, Sterling and I became famous figures at school. Many people ran over to peek at us. During a date that day, I inadvertently recalled Sterling's first love rumors. I pursed my lips and asked about it. Sterling quickly waved his hands to explain. At that time, he was exceptionally rebellious. When Reginald beat him, since he couldn't fight back physically, he fought back verbally. Things like saying he was gay, that his dad would have no descendants, or if his dad wanted a second child, the baby would be born without an asshole. As long as it was something that could anger Reginald to death, Sterling would let it pass through his lips. Even if he would be beaten more severely. Later, no one knew how this got out. Male students bullied by thugs sought out Sterling, begging for his protection, saying even dating would be fine. Sterling hadn't expected anyone to actually believe it, but given his personality, he indeed couldn't just ignore it. Later, the rumors became more and more outrageous until it became the version you heard. After slowly explaining, Sterling pinched my waist. Jealous, I habitually acted tough. I am not. Before I could finish speaking, Sterling took off the hearing aid in his left ear and laughed. I hope your mouth can stay this tough. Immediately, I felt a sense of doom and tried to crawl away. Unexpectedly, my calf was yanked back. Sterling's gaze darkened. Don't run, babe. You said you'd always stay with me. Before long, seeing the definition of his abs clearly, my scalp tightened. I'm done for. I think I'm going to die in this bed. A few years later, Sterling and I went abroad for further studies. Although not at the same school, we still lived together. That day, I went to help Sterling pick up his newly fitted hearing aids. Unexpectedly, the doctor started chatting with me, until he asked, Sir, actually I'm very curious. You should know that people with physical disabilities usually have their psychological state affected more or less, but Mr. Blackwood seems very healthy. I once asked him why, and he said it was because someone picked him up. Sorry, I didn't quite understand what that meant. I was stunned for a moment, then smiled. The answer is simple, because of love. Because of love, he kept scattering, and I kept gathering. Finally, piecing together the star fragments, I found into a star that isn't necessarily perfect, but is definitely complete. 2 years after returning to the country, Sterling, now a PhD returnee, took over the family company and regularly donated to non-profit legal organizations. And I also successfully entered my ideal company. The first person I met was Scarlett Summers. Seeing me, she didn't react at first. Soon, Scarlett apologized and thanked me. The apology was for the things she had done to me during our youth, including but not limited to exclusion and verbal bullying. The thanks were because during our undergraduate years, when Scarlett and her roommate encountered hooligans while returning late, it was me and a senior who intervened to save them. I didn't have much impression of the latter. Because it was very dark at the time, I didn't see the two girls' faces clearly. As for the former, thinking back to the suffering of my past life, I probably couldn't say words of forgiveness. Under Scarlett's ashamed gaze, I sighed softly. Please be a kind person from now on. Meeting Preston Montgomery again. He was the investor for a company project. From the moment we met, he stared at me fixedly, but I remained indifferent throughout. I had long heard that Preston was engaged. It was a business alliance that both sets of parents were very satisfied with. Just as I thought, Preston only looked rebellious, but in reality, he didn't dare to defy his family's arrangements at all. But none of this had anything to do with me anymore. After the cooperation negotiation ended, I grabbed my coat and left without looking back. To celebrate our 9th anniversary, Sterling specially booked out an open-air restaurant. On an ordinary evening, he took out a ring he had designed himself and put it on me with a firm and loyal gaze. Looking at our clasped hands, I smiled without speaking. The horizon glowed with a romantic blue-pink sunset. When the evening breeze blew, it seemed to connect time and space. In a trance, Sterling and I, carrying backpacks with our shoulders touching, were walking home together. In this life, we both pulled each other out of the abyss and grasped that ray of hope tightly. So us who are trying so hard to live, we will definitely be happy, right? Epilogue. Sterling Blackwood's perspective. I seem to have been unwelcome since childhood, ignored by my father, dealt with perfunctorily by servants, beaten and scolded by a strange woman, until the day of my 8th birthday. My ears seemed to have been beaten broken, because I couldn't hear. I was bullied by classmates since childhood. They called me a motherless little deaf mute. I cried loudly at home in sadness. But no one paid attention to me. When I grew up, I began to hate my dad. Since he didn't look forward to my arrival, why did he bring me into this world? It hurt, it really hurt. I decided to give him 99 chances. If he refused to change and continued to use me as a punching bag, then, on the 99th time, I would take him down to hell with me. The summer after graduating high school, I was whipped by my dad with a belt again. I dragged my scarred body to stay temporarily at my only friend's house. Unexpectedly, when I opened the door, I saw a girl with short hair. She opened her big eyes and stared at me curiously. For no reason at all, my ears inexplicably became burning hot. Later, listening to my friend explain, he wasn't a girl. Just because he lost a game, he was forced to grow his hair out. I stammered, asking for his name. But my friend, busy playing games, didn't even lift his head. He went to get the first aid kit. He'll probably help you apply medicine later. Ask him then. His name was Julian Foster, a very nice, very gentle name, just like him. He didn't ask how I got my wounds, just told me in a very soft voice to be careful about sun exposure and avoid certain foods. Otherwise, it will leave scars. That summer, I ran to my friend's house every day. Julian didn't come often. In a month, I could only see him 2 or 3 times. Later, university was about to start. My friend's family moved to another city. I couldn't find an excuse. I could only secretly watch Julian. He cut his hair short. He looked clean and refreshing, but there was someone very annoying beside him. Julian seemed to like him. On the first day of school, I was pleasantly surprised to discover Julian and I were in the same school, same major, and even the same class. I thought this was all destiny. I walked into the classroom excitedly, but he seemed to have forgotten me. I only remember that day. The classroom was very noisy. My hearing seemed to weaken again. When I returned to the dorm, Julian appeared before my eyes. He asked if I could pretend to be his boyfriend. In that instant, I just felt. Fate seemed to have heard my voice. My life, looked at closely, is full of mud pits everywhere. But Julian Foster descended from the sky and pulled me out of the swamp. He said he would always stay with me. Actually, compared to my selfishness, I hope Julian can be even happier. So if my living well can make him happy, I am willing to live forever in the way he likes. The end.